we're at the start of what's looking like it will be a severe pandemic. And there are problems emerging that can only be solved by global business and governments working together.
Continuing our coverage of the newly discovered CAPS disease and the scope of its deadly outbreaks.
It began in healthy-looking pigs, months, perhaps years ago. A new coronavirus spread silently within herds. CAPS is a serious respiratory disease. More than half of the recognized cases have required hospital care, creating a huge strain on healthcare systems.
Models estimate that we could have more than 12 million cases and close to 1 million deaths by mid-January. We're not sure how big this could get, but there's no end in sight.
Governments need to be willing to do things that are out of their historical perspective, or for the most part, it's really a war footing that we need to be on.
Patients are overwhelming healthcare facilities around the world, including many of the makeshift triage and temporary care facilities.
When this is all over, some families, some cities, will have suffered more from our interventions than from CAPS.
Countries are reacting in different ways as to how best to manage the overwhelming amounts of dis and misinformation circulating over the internet.
Last moment for comments.
Well, I think we should acknowledge that since the start of the pandemic, one of our members has succumbed to the disease. And I note that Dr. Chikwe, who was a very upstanding member of this committee, sadly is not with us today because he is fighting the disease.
Thank you. Yes.
So I took the time today. We had a long show. We were talking about a lot of things, and I knew we were going to be talking to James Corbett today at CorbettReport.com. And I took the time on Freedom's Feed. I'm publisher of Freedom's Phoenix, which is a news portal. And I did searches on our own site and found, we have been covering the event 201. But it didn't start till March, April. We started putting, a lot of this stuff. It was starting to line up with a lot of things that were happening. As I went through a highlight reel on that, and of course it's, Bill and Melinda Gates, everything. And, of course, I think of the information that James Corbett got out, but I started going through some of the, this kind of pretend planning that they had. It was the war room round table of whatever, and it was everything that we're seeing now. So my question to you, James, is that when I look at this stuff and I see their demeanor and the people involved and what they were looking for, I'm going, obviously it was a plan. Obviously it was obvious. And I'm wondering what they were thinking that by doing this and detailing it and it happening, and we got Fauci coming out and saying, I guarantee there's going to be a pandemic event or something like that. And it happens. I'm looking at, did they think we weren't going to notice or know that they said they don't care? Is it big wheels a turning, and or they think the American people aren't going to matter? We're not in the equation. We don't care. It's we just do what we're told. I'm wondering what you think their mindset is as they detailed their plan and then started enacting it. Enlighten me on that.
Well, let's look at the possibilities and let's detail them. I can think of two right off the top of my head. One is that the crazy specificity of what they were wargaming out there and its eerie correlation with what started playing out just a month later is either a sign that this was not, in fact, a actual planning event for what they were going to do, but an actual coincidence, or it indicates that they do want those with eyes to see and ears to hear to know this information for some reason. They want us to know that this was planned out in advance. Why? That would be the only question. Why do they? I mean, because obviously this was going to come out. Obviously it would come out in the alternative media. So why would they want that? And perhaps it is answered inside of the simulation itself. Did you watch the full thing or just the highlight reel?
I've seen a bunch of stuff over the months, but what I did today was a highlight reel.
Yeah. So if you get into, I can't remember if it's the fourth or fifth hour of the simulation where they go into
Whoa.
media.
Time out. How many hours was this thing?
I think it was 6, if I remember correctly.
And you watched the
Or there
whole
were
thing, of
6
course, because you're James
parts.
Corbett.
Yeah, it's just an hour per video. Kind of thing. Yeah, you can work your way through it, and I suggest people who are interested should probably do so.
It was scary.
Well, a couple of things that are interesting about it. One of which is the fake news reports, like literal fake news reports that they mocked up for this scenario.
Continuing our coverage of the newly discovered CAPS disease and the scope of its deadly outbreaks, there are now more than 30,000 reported cases. Experts warn this may be just the beginning of a global problem. GNN science reporters have produced a video about what we know so far about CAPS, the virus, the outbreak, and the resulting chaos.
It began in healthy-looking pigs, months, perhaps years ago. A new coronavirus spread silently within herds. Gradually, farmers started getting sick. Infected people got a respiratory illness with symptoms ranging from mild flu-like signs to severe pneumonia. The sickest required intensive care. Many died. CAPS is a serious respiratory disease. More than half of the recognized cases have required hospital care, creating a huge strain on healthcare systems. The fatality rate is about 10%. For comparison, CAPS is about as lethal as SARS and 2 to 4 times more lethal than the 1918 influenza pandemic, the worst pandemic on record. Even so, some people only exhibit mild flu-like symptoms, not requiring treatment in a hospital. Alarmingly, those people are able to walk around and spread the virus, not realizing they are doing so. Even worse, international travelers have been arriving at their destinations symptom-free, but within a matter of hours, becoming ill. Travel-related cases have blossomed into outbreaks in a number of locations and have quickly grown faster than health authorities could respond and contain them. In other places, physicians have quickly recognized the symptoms of CAPS and have been able to isolate infected individuals and avoid an outbreak, for now.
Public health agencies have issued travel advisories, while some countries have banned travel from the worst affected areas. As a result, the travel sector is taking a huge hit. Travel bookings are down 45%, and many flights have been canceled. Our U.S. affiliate has just released polling results on public expectations for a vaccine. A majority of Americans expect a vaccine to be available within 2 months, and 65% of those polled are eager to take the vaccine, even if it's experimental. In related news, a significant demand for personal protective equipment like N95 masks and gloves are on the rise due to the pandemic. However, globally, hospitals are running low. Alarming news emerging from social media companies today about the CAPS pandemic. Twitter and Facebook are reporting they've identified and deleted a disturbing number of accounts dedicated to spreading disinformation about the outbreak.
Countries are reacting in different ways as to how best to manage the overwhelming amounts of dis and misinformation circulating over the internet. In some cases, limited internet shutdowns are being implemented to quell panic.
Thank you, Catalina.
To me, it is clear countries need to make strong efforts to manage both mis- and disinformation. We know social media companies are working around the clock to combat these disinformation campaigns. The task of identifying every bad actor is immense. And experts agree that new disinformation campaigns are being generated every day. This is a huge problem that's going to keep us from ending the pandemic and might even lead to the fall of governments, as we saw in the Arab Spring. If the solution means controlling and reducing access to information, I think it's the right choice.
I mean, not only just the idea of having these actors sitting there and presenting it
No, they did like a 60 minutes retrospective of a year from now of when it happened and 65 million of how and this is right. It's a script. It's like a movie script.
Yeah, it really exactly right. And actually, some of the simulation TV events they were doing were interesting. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I remember one of the segments they did was like a mock interview or a mock debate about something about like closing down businesses or something, and they were essentially, I mean, this almost could have been the type of debate you would have seen on the real CNN just a few months later, although it was clearly scripted. These are clearly actors reading lines, but those are the kinds of things that they knew would be, in the event of this pandemic, the type of things people would be talking about.
So now let's look at this recent exchange on GNN that focused on the economic and financial crises that are rippling around the world.
The response to the CAPS pandemic is now the most expensive international emergency ever. Political leaders around the globe are faced with many impossible dilemmas, including financial. We have two guests today to discuss the bottom line of catastrophic response. First up is economist Dave Gamble. Are we out of money?
The best way to answer that is no, we are not out of money. Yet. But the fact is we are trending in a dangerous direction and something needs to change.
You have been quite vocal about that and generated some controversy along the way.
Well, look, you know me. I try to avoid controversy. But come on, common sense says it shouldn't be controversial to suggest our response should prioritize both lives and livelihoods. Absolutely, we need to save lives. We all know someone who's been affected by CAPS. But we literally cannot afford a heavy-handed response that suffocates our economy. Pragmatism is a wise choice. I mean, what exactly are the risks and benefits of slowing air travel, of staying home from work, closing schools, disrupting supply chains, interfering with our reliable channels of communication and news? Sure, some of these steps can help slow CAPS, but often only marginally and with serious costs. When this is all over, some families, some cities will have suffered more from our interventions than from CAPS.
No question, there is a lot of suffering. Let me welcome Dr. Juan Perez to this discussion. Is Dr. Gamble wrong?
Actually, in a way, we agree. Responders, whether international organizations, governments, or even employers and families, each are weighing risks and benefits. And there is not a one-size-fits-all approach, as there are different appetites for risk. What I will say, in my mind, our response should aim to protect every life we can.
Of course it should be. But let's be frank, letting the global economy slow to a halt puts lives at risk.
Yes, but there does need to be a balance.
Okay, you both agree balance is paramount. Theoretically, that's an easy choice. But leaders are now faced with very real and very tough decisions. Just last week, traditional sources for emergency funding had exceeded their limits. As new mechanisms are being discussed, there is consideration as whether funds should primarily support health emergency response or prop up economies.
Precisely. And we do need these funds sooner rather than later. Funding shortfalls are putting lives at risk and extending this devastating crisis.
Again, we seem to agree. We cannot shortchange the health response, but I suspect we disagree when I suggest that some of these funds are best used to save jobs and critical industries. National leaders certainly have this on top of their minds during the ongoing debates.
Look, I am not an economist or a politician for that matter, but as a physician, I am comfortable saying that our health response to CAPS cannot afford to wait for an incredibly complex debate about what sounds to me like history's most expensive economic bailout.
Thank you both, and we will be watching and listening for the outcome of these vital discussions. And certainly, the market is eagerly watching for any signs of hope.
Okay, to go deeper on this, Dr. Eric Toner from our team is going to give details about the financial situation.
So again, it's really quite in your face, and obviously, anyone who wants to just dismiss Event 201, oh, it was just a coincidence. I don't know. I just
Okay, who is trying? Who would after you see when I saw it, I was like, yeah, they, them, those are planning, and here it comes, and they're doing, and prepping somebody. It's almost like it's a way to not secretly or get conspiratorial. We're just openly handing the script to different departments and different people, and this is your role. And you got a guy in a uniform representing the CDC of I've got combat training.
Governments need to be willing to do things that are out of their historical perspective, or for the most part, it's really a war footing that we need to be on.
I mean, it's just I can, and then the prominence of Asia and China in this whole thing, and this is before China. I'm just this is it. I've seen this before with a lot of they, them, those secret handshake, build of whatever people, Rothschild, Rockefeller, and whatever the hell they're going to do to you. They like, or somehow they need, or they get justified in screwing you if they tell you they're going to do it and exactly how they're going to do it. So and so this was detailed. This is what's going to happen. This is how it's going to happen. This is how we're going to report it. This is what you're going to do. And I got some phrases in here that just, this is what what scared me. They got businesses and government working together.
We're at the start of what's looking like it will be a severe pandemic. And there are problems emerging that can only be solved by global business and governments working together.
This is, it's like fascism, 101. We're going to do this. We're going to have to do that. We're going to need to determine who needs the help the most. Not just countries or different places, but individuals. This is kind of this death panel thing. We got limited resources, unequal access to resources needs to be taken care of. So they're going to direct where things go. We need to know where all the supplies are. And I remember a few summers ago, it was in Washington State, and some neighbors and friends had put in a grain silo, and they signed it off. Yeah, it's not going to fall down. We're all good. And there was a guy over there, one of those GPS things. I'm sure I told you this before. He's got a GPS thing. They're GPS tracking where all the food is. Who are you? Oh, I'm a census taken of grain. I'm like, wow, I feel better now, So this is some of the stuff. I mean, I got a bunch more here, but it seems like they were talking about the economy. They were talking about, how, but it's not the economy. This would not happen naturally. This had to be done by force. This had to be enacted by somebody saying whatever. And when they did the H1N1, when this happened before 10 years ago, that's when we started, stockpiling. Yeah, they're going to, do this. This is how they're going to do it. When they started doing it, we found out later that the governors had billions of dollars. There's a bribe. You go, why in the hell did this governor? They're bribing them. They're threatening them. There's something. Has there been any scratching of that surface? Have you're digging into that at all?
I can't think of any specific things off the top of my head, but I think everyone would be best situated to find in their own locale, their own governor or their own county officials or whatever. Right. I mean, because there'd be a million examples of this. But I just want to underline. I want to underline what you just said just a few minutes ago, because it is important. There's another possibility if we're laying out the possibilities. One of which is that, and these possibilities aren't mutually exclusive, by the way. One possibility is that, yes, they need this type of planning event to get everyone on board to know what the script is that they're going to follow in the event of this event that we're about to launch. Because, of course, not everyone is a conspirator who's involved in the intimate planning of this, coronavirus thing. But you can bring them into the conspiracy in a completely open way by having a simulation.
They get their 3x5 card and know what to do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, you know what? I didn't do the full a podcast episode just delving into Event 201 at the time because I felt other people were doing that. But I guess I should, specifically in the context of, I have said a few times, this is the WTC 7 of the coronavirus 9/11. There's definitely a lot to dig into. So yeah.
But here's one thing they were talking.
Also, one other thing I wanted to point out that you pointed out. China, interestingly involved in this Event 201, despite the fact that the fake COVID caps, they call it in the simulation, did not originate in China. It originated in Brazil or Mexico or South America.
Somewhere else.
Somewhere else. But the head of the Chinese CDC, George Gao, was specifically involved and sitting there at the table in that list of participants.
At the moment, we want the funds, right? You need the money. So where's the money? So government kind of supplies some money. A lot of, private sectors, some are sitting here. You have some money.
At the time when we found out about it, March, April or something, it may have been, one of our conversations. I remember you talking about it, and we had stories on it, and I kind of, mentioned, yeah, well, of course, but I did not see this highlight reel, and it was way too specific. I mean, of course, now as time has gone on and they actually enacted it, I'm more sensitive to it, but I probably wouldn't have been as sensitive then. But it's industries and trade associations have to come together in cooperation to blah, 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 blah. Private industry cooperation for logistics. They couldn't do this. They need. I remember some of my children work at Honeywell Aerospace. President Trump came. Landed the plane there at Sky Harbor, walked over, and thank you, America, for making masks. You turned from making whatever the hell you were making before, making masks, and you kind of two thumbs up, family, good fun. So I'm going, it's stick and carrot all over the place to get, and it's just like with social media, stick and carrot, stick and carrot. Do you say the right things? Do you say the wrong things? This has been a massive psyop that is done on every level of society, with all associations, with all infiltration of all their guys and their liberal arts degree if somebody's got a degree in an accountant and an attorney. I mean, you can see it. They need these city attorneys. They need these county attorneys. They need these people in the name of we don't like Orange Man or whatever the hell it is that they're doing. And I'm going, wow. So what was some of the others here? Oh, this is the one I wanted you to comment on. We need a Marshall-type plan to, freaking everything. I mean, they were talking marshalling. The Marshall Plan. Explain the Marshall Plan to the audience, and what do they mean by a Marshall-type plan?
That's an excellent question, because I did not interpret it that way. You will note that I did play that clip in Medical Martial Law 2020. I interpreted it as him saying that they needed to put their response on a martial law footing. But you're right. He did, I think, specifically use the term Marshall Plan, which...
No, he said it. He said a Marshall-type plan.
We shouldn't underestimate the power of entrepreneurship. We need to escalate that, whether it's through the government's helping with tax breaks or subsidies of that nature to increase manufacturing of those types of products. It can happen quickly. A Marshall-type plan, don't mean to say that exactly, but a Marshall Plan that can go into effect can stimulate change very quickly.
Yeah.
This is like we need a Pearl Harbor event. Okay?
Right.
I mean, this is a Marshall-type plan. Now, the Marshall Plan was the rebuilding of Europe after World War II if we spent all the money on whatever the heck. So this is an international thing, but it's not, from, everybody to us or something like that. It's going to be the U.S. to everybody. We just print the money or something. I mean, Marshall-type plan from where to where?
That was the template. That's the Marshall Plan. But I think this was some sort of global version of that. But where's the money coming from and who's it going to go to? We'll work out those details later. But it's an exceptionally important part of history. And in fact, probably bears its own podcast or episode or something.
There's not a Marshall Plan Corbett thing. What the heck, man?
There isn't, surprisingly enough. No, there is nothing on the Marshall Plan specifically. But I will note that isn't it the Marshall Fund or something like that is one of the sort of remnants of that legacy that to this day cooperates with or funds the Atlantic Council or works with them in the whole NATO propaganda sphere. So
yeah, of course.
That Marshall name still continues to resonate. But yeah, you're right. He does say Marshall-type plan, and at the time I had interpreted that as him trying to say martial law. But no, it was Marshall Plan.
Yeah, no, I even read whoa, what the hell does that mean? I even wrote it down in quotes, a Marshall-type plan. That means government and industry and people be damned and resources going somewhere else from me. Nothing just printed up and all of a sudden my grandkids are indebted. Yeah. But I'm just like, a Marshall-type plan. Then they start, right after that, they go, we have to control and have trusted sources of information. Man, and that probably wouldn't have made as much of a scared the crap out of me 4 months ago. But, now we need trusted sources of information. What the hell does that mean?
So you're going to be interested when you go through and watch all 5 segments. There are 5 segments. It runs a full length of 3 hours, and it's worth it. So do it. You can watch it on double speed if you really need to get through it. But segment 4 is on communications discussion and epilogue video, and that's where they have their roundtable about how to handle the communications regarding the pandemic, and they talk specifically about all this disinformation and misinformation that's being spread online by bad actors, whether state or non-state, and how are we going to confront this? What are we going to do about it? And they're all talking about how they have to get the message out through trusted organizations or people who have trust with the public in order to get the official message out.
So here's the policy crisis for this meeting of the board. How can governments, international businesses, international organizations ensure that reliable information is getting to the public and prevent highly damaging and false information to the extent that's possible about the pandemic from spreading and causing deepening crisis around the world? How much control of information should there be, and by whom? And how can false information be effectively challenged?
I think this is more than just keeping the bad information out. It's also about making sure real public health information reaches the public. News is found from outlets other than social media. News organizations, public health groups, and companies need to help people take the right actions to protect themselves by promoting accurate, real information about the outbreak.
And bizarrely, laughably, at one point, I can't remember which participant is saying it, but they say, our organization has done polling and found that most people will trust their employer or boss in a situation like this. So we have to get the top CEOs of the country helping to spread this message.
So I would start by pursuing where trust exists in the ecosystem. Jane, in a prior meeting, mentioned that there's considerable trust by employees of their employer, and that's been borne out by our own trust barometer in the last several years, where it's extraordinary the amount of trust given to the employer. And coupled with that, in times of crisis, as we're living, the role of the CEO and the trust given to the CEO for advocacy and for advancement of accurate information is considerable.
Which I don't know what planet they're living on.
And of course, you have to you have to get them on board, and you got to shut down every single freaking ma and pa. We got business to compete with, nothing. Everybody's got Walmart and Amazon.
Right. So this is the dark shadow of what they're saying. So
that was their logistics thing. I can see it.
Message out. The official WHO, this is what you got to do message, and we're going to use the corporations to do that. But of course, the dark shadow of that is, well, we have to deal with this disinformation, and they do not come out and say. In fact, at some point, I think they say censoring or trying to suppress the information is going to be worse because it's going to make it worse or whatever, something along those lines. But clearly, I think they talk about flooding the zone with good information. I.e., they have to get their good official WHO propaganda out through every outlet and make sure everyone's flooded with it.
I personally do not believe that trying to shut things down in terms of information is either practical or desirable. And we do have, I think, a couple of strategies that are available to us, one of which is the flood strategy, second of which is relying and informing and equipping trusted sources of information with the facts so they can then pass that on. But we also need to actually think about a technological answer to this. So there is work that's being done to actually create algorithms to sift through information on these kind of social media platforms. And I know that the Gates Foundation and others are funding organisations to work on things like this in order that people can actually have more confidence in the sources that they will use in any event.
The social media platforms have to step forward and recognize the moment to assert that they're a technology platform and not a broadcaster is over. They, in fact, have to be a participant in broadcasting accurate information and partnering with the scientific and health communities to counterweight, if not flood the zone, of accurate information, because to put the genie back in the bottle of the misinformation and disinformation is nigh impossible.
So flood good information. Okay.
But as Derek Brose of ConsciousResistance.com has noted several times, and I agree with him, I think that isn't just about flooding the zone with their good information. I think they are going to, probably have been, intentionally trying to seed disinformation and misinformation out there that they can later come on and debunk and say, look, see, this was the bad news that these alternative media outlets were passing around, and because of that's why your grandma died, and that's why we need to take them off the internet.
Well, this has been, that JFK and 9/11, and I've seen this forever. They have you going down rabbit holes or whatever, and you point that out a lot, in your stuff. So, and thank you for that. I'm sensitive to it. But it's, I don't really mind the disinformation. Put it out there, whatever. It highlights the credibility of the people that said it. So it's just, it all, I put it out, everybody's kind of, because a lot of people got confirmation bias anyway, but I'm more concerned about the censorship of good information. That is, they'll want to seed it so that they can, we got to get this off. This guy's not any good. He's fake news and whatever. But what they're really doing is they just want the control of the good information not to be up, because they're not censoring you because you lied. They're censoring because you told the truth.
No, right. And this goes exactly back to what we were talking about last time about the fact checkers, because that is exactly what this is about. It's about smearing all of this misinfo and muddy info together and just saying anyone in this space is therefore fact checked. They shouldn't be verified. You shouldn't be able to see them if you're browsing the internet. And in fact, you say, like, who would dismiss Event 201? Well, factcheck.org. Let's take a look at some examples of the way that fact checkers like Snopes and factcheck.org and PolitiFact and all the others that you've seen over the years do what they do, because there is a very simple tactic behind debunking a fake news story, which is to take a story that is going around that has some credibility, there is something to it, but take the most sensational claim, take the most irrelevant part of that sensational claim, make it the central part of the argument, debunk that straw man, and then say, look, we've debunked that argument. And unfortunately, it's exceptionally effective because of the way the entire infrastructure for this fact-checking ecosystem has been constructed, that funnels people who are searching for this information. Well-meaning normies going to Google for their answers will type it in and will find, as one of the first results, one of these fact-checking sites that will say that whatever claim that they've just been told by their friend has been debunked. And maybe 1 in 100 of those well-meaning normies will actually click into the site to actually read the debunking, and maybe 1 in 100 of those 1 in 100 will actually use their own critical thinking faculties to really examine the way that that's being done. But just by that very method, you have 10,000 people, 9,999 of which will have been successfully placated. It's been debunked. There you go. We don't have to look at it, think about it, or examine it in any detail. This is how it is done. It's exceptionally easy, and it's exceptionally effective. And if you don't believe me, good. Do not believe me. Be skeptical and think for yourself. So let's take a look at a couple of examples of exactly how this is done. And one of the most egregious that I came across, at least in recent memory, that I did share here on the program a few episodes ago, but I want to reshare because I just cannot believe how egregious this is. You will know by now, if you are following the Corbett Report, you will know about Event 201 that was co-hosted by the Johns Hopkins Center and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and the World Economic Forum, etc., back in October 2019, that was wargaming, simulating a pandemic exercise. What would happen in the event of a globally spreading coronavirus pandemic? And they wargamed it out, and this is what we'll do, and this is how you shut down international travel, and this is what will happen to business, and this is how we keep business going, and this is how we deal with misinformation online. They did the entire exercise, and it's been talked about at length, but only by those crazy conspiracy theorists who think there's anything at all, any reason at all to even wonder about the holding of a pandemic exercise simulating the spread of a globally spreading coronavirus, novel coronavirus, at the exact moment that we are led to believe that a globally spreading novel coronavirus pandemic was breaking out. If you think that that's strange in any way, well, guess what? Factcheck.org wants to put a check on that for you, and they will do so in a post that was posted in January of this year by Angelo Fischera to factcheck.org. New coronavirus wasn't predicted in simulation, which, as I say, is about as far as most people will read. Oh, okay. So somebody sent me something about Event 201. I Google Event 201. It comes up with this. It says new coronavirus wasn't predicted in simulation. Okay, good enough. So it's been debunked. Now I can turn off my reasoning switch. Now, maybe you'll look in and look, they have a story. They have a big article about why this is false, fake news. But even the couple hundred words that they devote to this debunking is too much for most people, and they realize that. So if you really must try to delve into this, here's the quick take. Here's the too long didn't read for this 200-word article, in case you just can't be bothered to read through it. The quick take here: a conspiracy theory website distorted the facts about an emergency preparedness exercise to suggest that the Gates Foundation and others predicted up to 65 million deaths, in quotation marks, caps lock, because of course, caps lock makes you look even more crazy, from the coronavirus now spreading. The event dealt with a hypothetical scenario involving a fictional virus. Case closed, ladies and gentlemen. Again, I will let you, please do, honestly, I exhort you to go and read through that factcheck.org fact check, where, once again, they take some of the irrelevant parts, or even parts that aren't really being suggested by anyone in this story, putting them up as the central claims to be debunked, and then debunking them. As if the central claim that is being made is that somehow the Event 201 scenario, the pandemic war game that they had back in 2019, was about what we now call SARS-CoV-2. It was about that particular novel coronavirus, and it was predicted that would cause 65 million deaths, and that is the claim that we have to examine. And look, there hasn't been 65 million deaths, even by the wildly exaggerated, inflated numbers that the World Health Organization and others are floating around. So that's debunked. And look, they weren't talking about SARS-CoV-2, the novel coronavirus that's now spreading. They were talking about a fictional novel coronavirus. All right. Well, there you go. Case closed. Debunked. But you see the way they've completely deflected the core concerns about this. The timing of a pandemic exercise predicting essentially what is happening right now in terms of a novel coronavirus, globally spreading pandemic, shutdown of businesses, all of this that came from this simulation taking place at the exact same time that we are led to believe that the novel coronavirus was just starting to infect people, as we are led to believe in Wuhan. Again, anyone who doesn't see anything at least worthy of further inquiry in that type of monumental coincidence, where the attendees of Event 201, as I've pointed out before, got little coronavirus plushies as their memento mori to mark the event. Oh, isn't that so cute? They must have took them home and put them on the mantle. And then, wouldn't you know it, a novel coronavirus starts spreading and killing millions, as we're told. Interesting, isn't it? But no, it isn't, because when you Google it, you'll find factcheck.org has already debunked it, so you don't have to think about it. The whole point of the debunk is just so that when you type Event 201 into Google, because of course that's where the normies will go, the first thing that'll come up is the factcheck.org link to say debunked, and most people won't even click on that link. They'll just say, look, it's debunked.
A lot of these debunking sites, and of course you pick a bunch of them, and they're all funded by Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. One way or another. Yeah, one way or another. And you got to be careful when you say all, but I mean every one I've looked. It's all. And one way or another, they fund another group that funds. After 3 or 4, how far do I got to go? How many more I got to do? I get it. Okay.
To be fair, factcheck.org, I think, is the Annenberg Foundation. And you can look into their ties and blah, blah, blah. But it's the whole milieu of the foundation complex.
I'm convinced. The one thing that they did also address, they were going global community, global answer, global mistrust of government. They kept saying these kinds of things. And I'm going, well, the distrust of government is like a problem. And then I started thinking about United Nations and WHO coming out. The biggest threat to the global community is these, vaccine hesitancy, whatever the hell that means, and I'm going, they're bringing it all out, man. There's some desperation thing going on here. There's some plan.
Let's just highlight what you just pointed out there. Vaccine hesitancy is the word they are trying to embed right now. They are trying to conflate anti-vax, which, of course, most people will think, well, against all vaccines at all times for everyone in all situations, just these crazy anti-vaxxers who are against all medical science. They're trying to conflate that position with vaccine hesitancy. So if you have any questions about the safety or efficacy of any vaccine at all that is being mandated or being put on a schedule by government, then you are vaccine hesitant and you are the problem that has to be eliminated. And they have held all sorts of, there's white papers, there's things being held by the Rockefeller Foundation about this. There was hearings that were held in Ontario last year about this that I saw. For example, Rosemary Frey, who I recently had on the program, she was presenting at that, basically making the point that, this is a convenient thing for Big Pharma. If you portray literally any question about any of these vaccines as vaccine hesitancy and ban it, you are essentially giving the green light to Big Pharma to put out anything, and they will be indemnified from everything, which of course is the point. And this is the exact point that you would think, of course, thinking of the old, left-right nonsense, you would think the people on the left used to have at least some concern about big corporate, capitalists. It's the capitalists trying to kill you. So why are we trusting these big corporations and big pharma? Why do we give them the green light? Oh, science, because science. And that has overridden, for a lot of the people on the phony left, that has overridden whatever kind of hesitancy they used to have about corporations.
What I'm looking for here, I had it up. I thought I did. I can, find, I got all these stories I wanted to talk about, but it was Fauci making a gazillion. He has a $9, medicine row, whatever the hell it is, and he's going to charge thousands of dollars for treatment. He's going to make gazillions of dollars because these guys get to patent their own stuff, and they don't want malaria drugs that fix and everything. Hey, man, I got mine over here. Man, no, hell no, man, I'm going to be a gazillionaire, and nobody challenges it. Why?
Yeah, of course. The interesting part about all of this is that even as lucrative as selling health, quote unquote, to the public has been over the past several decades through Big Pharma, which of course is not really selling health, it is actually in their business model interest to keep you sick, dependent on their chemicals. But as lucrative as that has been, it is about to get orders of magnitude more lucrative, as the new prevailing paradigm is you must be healthy at all times, and we will literally juridically oblige you, as Giorgio Agamben writes, oblige you to health. You will have to take whatever chemicals these people are putting out, and with the force of law. So that's going to basically put a underscore under the bottom line of these corporations. It is about to become an unimaginably lucrative field,
I didn't
for
see
people like Bill Gates to be investing in.
It may have been one of your videos. I saw this, and it's the first time that I saw that Bill Gates was on a financial program to where they brought up the finances of vaccines. Oh, yeah, we invested $2 billion, but, man, we're making bank on the back end and proud of it. This is what do you think? I just give $2 billion away without expectation I won't get some?
Okay, so let me be the devil's advocate here against that clip, which I did include in the Gates documentary. So I will play the other side, and I will make what a Bill Gates supporter would say about that clip. He specifically is talking in regards to Becky Quick's question on CNBC about the return on investment for vaccines, which she says, "Oh, it kind of stunned me when you came up with these numbers. Can you run through the math?" And he says, we see a phenomenal track record from investing in vaccines. It's been $100 billion overall that the world has put in. Our foundation is a bit more than $10 billion, but we feel there's been over a 20-to-1 return. So if you just look at the economic benefits, that's a pretty strong number compared to anything else. And, as Gates also admits, it is not a spirit of selfless generosity that motivates his interest in vaccines and other lucrative health interventions.
I'd like to talk to you about your approach to vaccinations. You wrote something recently, and like you always do, you kind of looked at the problem from a scientific and business perspective on things. You've invested $10 billion in vaccinations over the last 2 decades, and you figured out the return on investment for that, and it kind of stunned me. Can you walk us through the math?
You know, we see a phenomenal track record. It's been $100 billion overall that the world's put in. Our foundation is a bit more than $10 billion. But we feel there's been over a 20-to-1 return. So if you just look at the economic benefits, that's a pretty strong number compared to anything else.
Now, the question is, what is he talking about with that return? Does he mean that the Gates Foundation has invested $10 billion and they've gotten $200 billion out of it? Or is he saying that, no, the overall effect to the economy in keeping people healthier has been a 20-to-1 in terms of the investment that these governments are making? They get a 20-to-1
What do you think
return
he
on
meant?
that, in the sense that people are more able to go to work and be productive and all of that. That, I guarantee you, that is the way the Gates supporters will spin what he is saying there.
Well, what do you think?
I think it's a bit of both, actually. I mean, I think I get why he's saying that. I don't agree with it, obviously, but I get he's probably thinking that he is saying that. But he is actually saying what the actual truth, which there really is a bottom line return on investment on this. But I don't think he is intending to say.
No, he's not.
It's like
but
Larry
what I got
Silverstein
out of
thing.
it was this, is that he is incentivizing entrepreneurs to get into the space and that there's money to be made. And the fact that he happens to be one of the guys making the money, well, that's just a side thing, you know?
Yeah.
And it was because I saw there was one thing in here I did write down. They were going, entrepreneurs. We must incentivize entrepreneurs to blah, 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 blah. And I'm going, wow, this is, they're talking fascism and they don't even realize it. Or they don't care. I mean, well, of course we're going to have public-private partnership and all this other crap. One thing I had up I wanted to talk about.
And let me interject while we're on that subject, because it's exceptionally important. That's why I included it in the documentary, not just about Gavi's specific goal being creating healthy markets for vaccines. That's what they say in black and white. That's why, that's their goal. Of
They
what
need
they're
a big
attempting to
special
do.
interest business.
But they got that from the Center for Global Development, which preceded Gavi in the early 2000s. They put out a report called Making Markets for Vaccines, in which basically their brilliant idea is we're going to convince governments to sign on the bottom line and say, we commit to buying any vaccine that is made for such and such purpose, for such and such delivery of such and such program in such and such country, before the vaccine is even developed. And that will incentivize the big pharma manufacturers to make vaccines for these poor brown people.
Well, even more, what was it?
Win. This use of foundation funds to set public policy to drive up corporate profits is not a secret conspiracy. It is a perfectly open one. When the Center for Global Development formed a working group to develop a practical approach to the vaccine challenge, they concluded that the best way to incentivize pharmaceutical companies to produce more vaccines for the third world was for governments to promise to buy vaccines before they were even developed. They titled their report, Making Markets for Vaccines.
The project, Making Markets for Vaccines, was really designed to address a problem that's existed for a long time, which is insufficient research and development budgets as well as investment capacity in vaccine development and production for the third world. How do you create better incentives to get the pharma community, the vaccine community, to produce products that are specifically dedicated for the developing world?
Michael Kremer, a professor at Harvard, had been thinking about this problem for many years.
He realized that if the rich countries of the world were to make a promise that they would buy a malaria vaccine if somebody produced it, that would give an incentive to the pharmaceutical industry to go and do the research and development needed to make one. But this idea was unfamiliar. No government had made a commitment to buy a product that didn't already exist.
When the first such advanced market commitment was made in 2007, a $1.5 billion promise to buy yet-to-be-produced vaccines from big pharma manufacturers, there was the Gates Foundation as the only non-nation sponsor. The Gates-founded Gavi Vaccine Alliance is an open partnership between the Gates Foundation, the World Health Organization, the World Bank, and vaccine manufacturers. Their stated goal includes introducing new vaccines into the routine schedules of national immunization programs, and to engage in market-shaping efforts to ensure healthy markets for vaccines and other immunization products. If introducing new vaccines and ensuring healthy markets for them was the aim of Gates's decade of vaccines, there can be no doubt that COVID-19 has seen that goal realized in spectacular fashion.
Recently we have Gates, we'll pay off your polio debt that you did with Japan. You're going to eradicate if you owe so many tens of millions of whatever, and then we'll give you incentive here and do this if you have complete 100% vaccination or 97.6 of whatever the hell the condition of. Oh, and you want to go to the grocery store? You want to get on the ski lift? There's going to be incentive. Where's your card? And we keep worrying about there's going to be an immigration thing. No, they're going to have a national ID of where's your shot.
As in so many other aspects of the unfolding crisis, Gates's unscientific pronouncement that we will need digital certificates to prove our immunity in the new normal of the post-coronavirus world.
Eventually, what we'll have to have is certificates of who's a recovered person, who's a vaccinated person.
Is now being implemented by a number of governments. It is now being reported that OnFido, a tech startup specializing in AI-based biometric ID verification, is in talks with the British government to provide the type of digital certification Gates mentioned, dubbed an immunity passport. The proposed system would require would-be workers to use the OnFido-provided app to scan their face or other biometric data, link that information to a SARS-CoV-2 antibody test, or, eventually, proof of coronavirus vaccination, and then have their picture taken and immunity verified every time they wish to access a restricted space or work environment. Last month, OnFido announced that it had raised $50 million in a round of investments led by Bill Gates' old company, Microsoft.
I don't think this is going to be fully swallowed by everybody. It's that kind of Lincoln thing. You can fool all the people some of the time and some of the people all the time, but not everybody all the time.
But it's going to be swallowed by more people than you would expect.
I know.
Precisely because they have framed it in a way that all the statists are on board with it. And 99% of people, unfortunately, are statists because, we need national IDs and national borders.
As long as I get my universal basic income.
Yeah, and how are we going to prove that we're real Americans? We're going to carry the real ID card, and by the way, that's going to come with your vaccination, history, right. And whether or not
one of the things that we had up there, and I wanted to talk about, was because of not going to the doctor, not having well baby visits, and all that, because the mortality rate of all of these well baby visits, they go get their 15 gazillion shots all the time, and I mean, I got 12 grandkids, and I'm telling you, man, it's like. Well baby visit, well baby visit, whenever they call it, it's the opposite, man. I was like, hell no. And my daughters and daughters-in-law, they're just going, man, you have no idea the pressure they put on, the kind of, man, you have to, or they screw it. They go to a naturopath or, whatever the hell. So they're just pumping these kids with this stuff, and then all of a sudden, they're not, and they don't die. You got a big giant drop in, and you're going, whoa, how are they going to manage that? I don't know. And then here in New Hampshire, there's a big thing for not, keep the schools closed, which is the freedom community going, nah. All my children have finally, one of them decided not to put their kids back in government schools. They go, nah, we're good. I don't know what they think is going to happen. They're going to open up the schools. And then in Arizona, we got the governor there, Ducey, comes out and goes, you know what? You can't go on the river anymore. We're closing down the bars again, and everything's closed until at least school maybe kind of start in September. Of what? What logic is there? Is somebody paying somebody something for something? All you got is 50 states, man. You got, and I tell you, when I saw this before, it was Janet Napolitano was governor in Arizona. Okay, she went on to be Department of Homeland Security, and how she became governor is like another thing. So she's governor of Arizona, and there was a guy that was corrupt from before, back in the day of whatever that I knew the story of, that became the liaison from Arizona to the Department of Homeland Security. These were 50 guys that were in, the administration, and, we're 9/11 of, oh my God, and we need and color-coded of, and I had that guy on my show because he was all, because, Sheriff Arpaio had a show on my station that I was on, and he was on Sheriff Arpaio's show, so he thought I was cool. I'm on the same station, goes in the same studio. Libertarian. It didn't go as well as he thought. So they were arguing over their color coding thing, and they had a plan. All of a sudden, I'm going, why, what, you got red, whatever the hell happens in Miami, why you got to shut down Seattle? What possible connection do you have with that? Which is the same thing that's going on here. It's got to be a national thing. It's all BS. It's made up. It's just, and they cause all kinds of turmoil. Then you get pushbacks from the state. And that instance, with these color coding kind of stuff, I'm thinking that they learned the incentives. We got to have, and you got to pay for, and you got to get, and it's going to come down to the pensions. This whole thing is what I thought was going to happen. The economic collapse was going to center around the municipal and state pensions. Well, what are they doing? They're going to be paying them off. They're going to be subsidizing. They're going to something. I have no idea what, but I think that's what they're got, carrot they're hanging in front of these governors and mayors and stuff.
Let me make just a quick note on what you're saying there. Yes, you make a very important point that as 9/11 and the terror state, all of that was the terror industrial complex, was all about nationalizing security and nationalizing the homeland. Quite specifically, and of course it had international implications and ramifications, but it was certainly about federalization of policing and all of that. This new 9/11, whatever, is going to be the internationalization of that. It is explicitly an international threat to international security, and how are we going to deal with that? Only at an international level. And the first order of effects that we're seeing from that is, for example, Europe won't be opening their borders to America because America hasn't handled this in the right way. And you better believe until everyone's vaccinated and they have their vaccine ID cards and blah, 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 and they can prove they're good citizens, they won't be allowed to travel to Europe or anywhere else. And every country is going to be doing that and is already doing that. In fact, Japan is now starting to allow businessmen to fly between Japan and Vietnam, but you have to quarantine and you have to follow certain rules when you're there and all of this stuff. So this is so much about what this is about. The other part about the economic ramifications and financial ramifications, of course, again, exceptionally important because this is a gigantic economic swindle at the same time.
One of the things that was a big issue in, I think it was like 2005, 6, we had one of our Freedom Summits, and it was a big debate on immigration. This is before, Trump and everything, whatever. And it was all centered around ID. And some people are like, yeah, America, I'm proud to show my American flag colored passport, whatever the hell ID of something, right? And of course, that means, well, then it's papers, please. And, when do they get to look? Is it, you got to pass, at least it's going out or coming in kind of deal. But once you're home based, I'm home and I'm home and get the hell out of my face. Well, we have to deal with checkpoints in Arizona a lot. You anywhere near the border, you got all this kind of crap going on. Well, of course, where am I being detained? Am I being detained? Am I free to go? And they always ask, are you a U.S. citizen? I was born in a hospital in Florida. What? I was born in a hospital. It sounds like a legal question. I don't remember. I was, whatever the hell. Go, whatever. I'm a middle-aged white guy. They don't care, But you could see it constricting. You press this stuff to find out where the edge is. You opt out all the time on your TSA stuff. You get your, whatever the hell. It's getting to where they can see and they know who the resistors are and how they're doing everything. And it's going to come to a point that they don't give a crap. And the proper role of government defending rights, don't care, not on our agenda. We're going to do whatever the hell we want. Well, there's a blowback to that. And do you think that they, them, those, and the governments and different levels of, are they needing that? Are they prepared for that? Do they expect that? Is that part of their formulation of what's going on? What do you think?
Oh, there's no way that they would be surprised by kickback to what's going on. I think the surprising thing is how little we have seen so far, but perhaps that's part of their calculations as well. But absolutely. In fact, I recently turned this on an interview that I did, essentially the Corona Constitution is being written. It is exposing once again, that there is no, I mean, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, whatever the particular piece of paper in your particular locale is called, it means absolutely nothing. It is a piece of paper that the authorities will choose to abide by or choose not to abide by as they see fit. Like the governor of New Jersey saying to Tucker Carlson, yeah, I don't know what the constitutional basis for me not allowing certain people to go to work is. That's above my pay grade. Who cares? And maybe a few years from now, maybe some court will say, well, you shouldn't have done that. But what does that matter? Those businesses are already out of business. Done deal. That is the way this works. And this is the new Corona Constitution that's being written, which is whatever we say in the name of health security at any time. And that I should drill into the minds of anyone with lingering ideas that statism is the answer to all of this, but that is not the answer. But as you're saying, they already know who is opting out, literally and metaphorically.
Did you ever come across in your research a thing called the Constitution for the New States of America? It was a Ford Foundation and Rockefeller thing back in the late 70s, and they did it. You read this Constitution, you should do a search on it right now. Just put new Constitution, a Constitution for the New States of America, and the Bill of Rights was replaced with this Bill of Privileges kind of thing, and it was you have the right to free speech when and if blah 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 blah. And it was a thing. I'm kind of surprised. We'll get it. I'll get it to you.
Please do forward it, yeah.
And it was something in the early 90s that as a young libertarian, we're going to always, want you to look up this stuff and you need it. And I'm going, holy crap. This is like their Event 201 kind of crap and what we have to do in the New States of America thing. So, yeah, it's called the New States. All right, audience. We're going to do it because, damn it, we need to do this. We'll pull it up. What we get. New States of America Constitution. Boom shakalaka. Here we go. Proposed Constitution for the New States of America. Constitution proposed blah, 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 blah. All right, so let's see if this is the one I'm thinking about. I'm thinking this is it. Okay, some scary parts of the proposed. I think if you click into it, you go to the, whoever it is, and at the bottom it had when they were doing it and who was doing it. But anyway, so it's a new Constitution. You read the Bill of Rights, and it's kind of like freedom of expression, of communication, of movement and assembly, or a petition shall not be abridged except in declared emergency. It's that kind of crap, So this right here, when you do the research on it, it was, let's see, a Constitution for the New States, yada, 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 yada. Aspen Institute Chairman Robert O. Anderson, Chief Executive Officer, whatever the hell. So anyway, this was, I don't know if they just put this up there or who was doing it.
I've got a 1970 New York Times article, Study Center offers new U.S. Constitution, on the theory that one way to stimulate thinking about the shortcomings of the present U.S. government is to conceive a plan for a better one. The Center for the Study of Democratic Institutions has suggested a new constitution for the United States.
Fund for the Republic, which is a Ford Foundation thing. Ford Foundation, there it is.
Yeah.
So just the story behind this. This is what I, as a young activist, was exposed to. This is, the plan of. So when they go, well, it's a secret handshake. If they got in the I'm going, well, of course they do. They never stopped. When haven't they? It's us. It's not them. Of course they're going to do it. They're doing it right in front of us. This has been going on forever. This is the kind of stuff I was all, James Corbett on, back in the early 90s. So I'm just going, that's why I'm like, oh my God. But now it's manifesting right in front of us now. It's, this was, this Event 201 was, a bunch of this crap, and all the stuff that you go on about.
Wait, can you go back to that screen for 1 second? Read Article 1. Just read it out loud for the audience.
Okay, let's do Article 1.
The
preamble?
No, Section 1. Sorry, Article 1, Section 1.
No, I did. Freedom of expression, of communication, of movement, of assembly, or a petition shall not be abridged except in declared emergency.
Except in declared
emergency. Yeah, no, it was all like that. I didn't have to go to another one.
This is exactly the kind of, anyone
who
doesn't see the entire game that is being played in a statement like that just doesn't understand anything.
Yeah, I'm just, I remember this. I'm shocked it's still up on the freaking internet, But,
Yeah.
now, again, it's never going to go away. But, so this is the kind of stuff that, I was exposed to as a young activist. This was the conspiracy of the Trilateral Commission and the Council on Foreign whatever the hell, and Brzezinski and Rockefeller and all this stuff, and the Federal Reserve and everything, but now it's common knowledge. And I think they know it's common knowledge, and they don't care. They're just going, yeah, what are you going to do about it? We own CNN, So so that's my question to you with this. I know, I get it. Stay them those. They're going to, because they can. So I'm going, when is it that they can't? What can't they do? And that's why I'm afraid they're injecting us with notions and potions from the crown, and they're genetically changing us. They're changing our personality, our propensities for whatever the hell, our even physical ability to resist, whatever pathogen. This is big bad, oh my God stuff. So what do you think's going to stop them?
Well, certainly not a piece of paper. I can tell you that much.
Not a piece of paper.
I'm not looking for some sort of constitutional answer to the.
Not a piece of paper. Thank you. That's all I need to know. Not a piece of paper.
Yeah, but so on that notion that you just said about injections and other things, let me read the quote from The Impact of Science and Society, Bertrand Russell. Diet, injections, and injunctions will combine from a very early age to produce the sort of character and the sort of beliefs that the authorities consider desirable, and any serious criticism of the powers that be will become psychologically impossible. Even if all are miserable, all will believe themselves happy because the government will tell them that they are so.
Okay, now where did this come from?
The better part of a century ago.
From where?
The Impact of Science on Society by Bertrand Russell.
Wow. Yeah, wasn't Bertrand Russell a big eugenics guy?
I will not go out on that limb because I don't have that research in front of me. Clearly, his defenders will say he was warning about what was coming. I have perhaps.
Well, no. It was.
I haven't looked into Russell enough to talk about him at length.
Or maybe it was Bernard Shaw or.
Yeah, George Bernard Shaw is the one. And interestingly, Bernard Shaw was an avowed, professed eugenicist.
But there are an extraordinary number of people whom I want to kill. Not in any unkind or personal spirit, but it must be evident to all of you, you must all know half a dozen people at least, who are no use in this world, who are more trouble than they are worth. And I think it would be a good thing to make everybody come before a properly appointed board, just as he might come before the income tax commissioners, and say every 5 years or every 7 years, just put him there and say, sir or madam, now will you be kind enough to justify your existence?
But interestingly enough, I do get, I have gotten a few emails from people, for me including him in the Gates documentary, saying, oh, he was kind of a joker. He wasn't really seriously talking about killing people. No, I don't think people know. Shaw, not just once or twice, but on many occasions, really.
He certainly got it into the discourse. He definitely wanted that subject brought up, just like Bill Gates does for death panels.
You're raising tuitions at the University of California as rapidly as they can, and so the access that used to be available to the middle class or whatever is just rapidly going away. That's a trade-off society is making because of very, very high medical costs and a lack of willingness to say, is spending $1 million on that last 3 months of life for that patient, would it be better not to lay off those 10 teachers and to make that trade-off in medical costs? But that's called the death panel, and you're not supposed to have that discussion.
There is. Exactly. See, I can understand. It's my inheritance went away with my father's illness. I get it. I go, hey, Dad, you're looking kind of peaked here. I got a 12 gauge. I see freedom as the answer to all of these things. If you weren't subsidized, if it wasn't this and that, and people prepared for themselves, they made themselves healthier, they ate better, they exercised, they blah, 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 blah. Quit subsidizing sloth. Quit subsidizing sitting on your ass. Quit subsidizing everything.
This is always the point that it goes back to. Yeah, there is some underlying idea of something that does need to be discussed in the death panel discussion and all of that. But the underlying part of it that's never addressed is, okay, so what's this panel? Who appointed them?
Exactly.
Who gives them authority over me and my family? We make the choices for our family. Who is this panel that sits over top of us and decides who lives and dies? Who appoints them? How do they get their authority? Oh, don't look into any of that. No, we're just the state will decide and we'll appoint these panels.
You know what's so bad about it? Is that as a family, it's like, all right, we all pool together and what can we do to help and how much of my 401k of silver I'm going to, for mom, dad, we all kind of whatever. I mean, which we have done. This is kind of stuff that, we make these decisions. But to prevent me from doing that, and what's really insidious also, you don't even know what the price tag is. They don't know. You ask the doctor, they have no freaking idea. The price tag? What's that? That was another story out on Freedom's Phoenix today. All these hospitals, because of COVID, that are going out of business. Bullshit! These guys are making bank on this thing. I don't know which one's not. They must be doing it wrong or something. But there is New York hospitals, man, you're going on a ventilator, and you ain't coming off.
Let me just say this. If I admit a patient to the hospital and they're on Medicare and they have just routine pneumonia for a diagnosis, the hospital will get a lump sum payment called a DRG, and it'll be about $4,600. If I admit that same patient and I attach COVID-19 to the pneumonia diagnosis, then it goes from $4,600 to $13,000 for that admission, regardless of whether the patient's in a hospital for 3 days or 13 days. If during that hospitalization I put the patient on a ventilator for a period of time, then the payment goes from $13,000 to $39,000. Now that's a big payment.
So there's somebody's having to stay after school on this stuff. I am not satisfied but where have we seen this before? Nobody got in trouble for 9/11. Nobody got in trouble for the Big Short or the TARP or the economic whatever. Nobody's going to get in trouble for this one. Nobody gets in trouble. There's no accountability. Cops can kill and maim at whatever. Thugs come into your cul-de-sac and rape and pillage and burn and whatever the hell, and then you're the bad guy if you got a gun. I mean, there is some kind of something coming, and I think there's some kind of something pushing back. And they're setting the stage for something, and I don't know who the hell else to ask other than James Corbett. What the hell are they setting the stage for, man? What the hell?
I wish I had the answer.
You lose. Go make another Corbett report.
Well, look, I mean, we all see the writing on the wall. We all know which direction this is trending. We all know that this is not the direction we want to be going in, unless, of course, we manage to steer this in a completely different direction. And that's not going to happen by everyone shutting up and complying and wearing their masks and rolling up their sleeves when they're told to. It is going to require the only thing that will ever stop the tyrants, which is non-compliance. And let me demonstrate that once again by recourse to the 500-year-old wisdom of Etienne de la Boétie, The Politics of Obedience. Anyone who hasn't read this book, it is not a big book. It looks like a big book. It's actually just big print. You can read this in one sitting if you try, and you should, because it makes the point very forcefully. Tyrants are only tyrants because we go along with it. And I agree that might be changing. That calculus may be changing certainly in the coming generation or two, because of the technology that's coming online to automate the tyranny and to genetically engineer us and to put whatever in our food and water and everything else to completely eliminate the human spirit. But as long as the human spirit exists and there is the human factor, then we are complicit if we go along with these plans. The only thing that is incumbent on us and the only thing that will make a difference is non-compliance. Do not go along with these plans. That is the most important thing to stress and underline at every point. The choice is still yours. And yes, there will be consequences for those choices, and they're going to get worse and worse, but the choice is still yours.
What do you think in that time when Etienne was writing that compulsory government education was a thing? I mean, is it a time to where they didn't have the next generation in their control? And what about now? And the fact that they did this school closing thing, I of all the things that have happened, I think that was probably the most glimmer of hope that I got out of this entire freaking thing. I go, oh, you left the kids with their parents that love them and find out what you did to them? And they go, God, you're dumb crap, man. What the hell are they doing? You ain't going back. I don't think they saw that one coming.
Yeah, I think the plan is exactly what we saw play out in, for example, New York, where Cuomo appoints Bill Gates to head this new panel or whatever it is to reimagine schooling in the post-COVID era. So now they're gonna obviously it's all going to be well now we'll just get them directly wired into the machines and they'll have machine teachers and it'll all be online. That's their dream. I don't think it was necessarily part of the plan that families would rediscover, hey, wait, it's actually good to spend time with my family and to be with my children. And wow, look at this. This is a new idea. So yeah, I think there are definite pressure points here if people apply them. But one thing I want to discourage people from doing is to look online for signs of resistance, because the revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be Twittered. The revolution will not be YouTube. The revolution is happening in the streets, in reality, with real people, and there are a lot of people who are not going along with this, but you will not see that reflected in the social media, the controlled social media platforms. They will not allow it. Once again, do not look for that for validation. Look for reality and find community in physical meat space. That's the last vestige of reality.
Is what I want to encourage you with, as here in New Hampshire, the community. That's what I'm looking for. That 100 to 200, that 120 kind of groups, little groups around that got it going on. And we found them, many of them that come from all over the world here to the festivals. And I'm just like, and then 4th of July, we're going to have a big fireworks show here and everything too. I'm not worried about some people. I'm not worried about some groups. I'm not worried about a lot of my friends. I'm not as even worried about my family, except, they're wanting the big job of whatever. But we'll survive, thrive, and we'll do okay because we're of the right mindset. We understand that we can starve them out of their existence by ignoring them probably most of the time. But, the thing is that there's so many people. There's a great culling coming, and they're going to be roadkill. This is not going to go well for a lot of people, especially those that think that government is going to protect them, supply them, nurture them. They're not. You are roadkill. You are cannon fodder. You are there for their agenda, whatever, and you will be quickly discarded. I don't know what the hell you think you're going to get, or short-term or long-term thing. And this has happened to all Marxist revolutions. I don't know what the hell they're thinking is going to happen. So my thing is, I don't have to beat them. We just have to outlast them. And the love bus going around, I'm looking for these people around the country. And we go back, we're here in New England, then we're going back west in the middle of July. We're flying out there for some events. Then we're coming back. Then we're traveling across the northern United States after some other things that we're doing up here, looking for these groups. So contact us. You go to, Love Bus Liberty Tour is freaking, we're setting up all the social media. Finally, I got, that taken care of. My daughter used to be my producer for 2.5 years. She's come back as I'm paying her, but she's like, hell no, I ain't doing the, that's like make you old. She has a full-time job at Honeywell Aerospace, and she's doing this with 2 children for the cause. Because I can see that people are now understanding how serious this is for the generation next. And there's always a generation next. And they will be seeing James Corbett, CorbettReport.com videos and your commentary. I guarantee it because I will make sure. Damn it. James, thanks for coming on. I do feel somewhat better, but I don't know why. It's so...
Well, look, let's not sugarcoat it. It's going to get dark, but there is always the light and the possibility.
Yeah,
so
it's no. It's freaking no. It's just no. And then we'll see why, just no. Because the hologram is what they're putting up for you. It's not real. If you walk through it and you go, wow, that wasn't even really there. They don't have the power that they want you to believe they do, but we have the power of no. Peace, guys. Thanks a lot, James. You're the man.
Who is Bill Gates?